Smothered in Hugs, the tune there from Local H's song that you hear on the soundtrack for Sling Blade, but you don't hear it during the movie. You hear Guided by Voices instead. Local H, Scott Lucas, big fan of film, writes about it for Chicagoist. We're going to hear from him shortly. He'll kind of give us the entire backstory on the behind-the-scenes battle between label and composer and director and all that fun political stuff that comes into play when it comes to putting a song on a soundtrack. But let Scott talk about that. That was Smothered in Hugs from Local H. And in addition to being on the Sling Blade soundtrack, you can also find that on their Best of the Island years from their days with Island Records. Well, a show coming up here May 2nd, next week, that you and I are going to be attending on the near northwest side of Chicago in the Wicker Park neighborhood. 2033 West North Avenue is the location of First Ward. That's North Avenue just west of the Milwaukee-Damon pain in the neck interchange over there. But Scott Lucas of Local H teaming up with Jimmy Chamberlin of the Smashing Pumpkins, along with classical composer Matt Ulery, they are going to do a live score to the Russian propaganda silent film Battleship Potemkin. Well, the Chicago International Music and Film Festival, taking place May 1st through 4th in Chicago. A pretty unique array of film experiences, and as always, they incorporate music into that event. This year, you can check out live performances by Booker T, of Booker T and the MGs, obviously. But also part of that festival, Yola Tango. They're doing a live appearance. They're fantastic. But Scott and Jimmy Chamberlin, part of that May 2nd at First Ward in Wicker Park. We'll post all this info on our Facebook page. You can also shoot us an email, Rock and Roll Radio Program. That's the letter N, not the word and. Rock and Roll Radio Program at gmail.com. Twitter, we'll tweet all this stuff too, at Rock Radio WIMS. So go follow us there for compelling information. But Scott Lucas of Local H, part of the Chicago International Music and Movie Festival, doing that performance with Jimmy Chamberlin, and uniquely qualified to speak on the topic of music and film as a guy who, as a member of Local H, has put songs on several soundtracks. We heard the one from Sling Blade, but talked with him last week about music and film, and this is what it sounded like then. All right, very pleased to welcome back to the show my next guest from Local H, Mr. Scott Lucas. Not here to talk Local H today, here to talk film. Thanks for joining us again on the program. How are you, sir?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, but you've got an interesting show coming up here Friday night, 5 days from today, May 2nd, at First Ward in Wicker Park. An interesting thing you're doing with Jimmy Chamberlin of the Smashing Pumpkins and Chicago-based bassist and composer Matt Ulery. You guys are coming together as a band called Mary Shelley to provide the live score to the silent film Battleship Potemkin. How exactly did this come about?
I played with Jimmy last year at this thing at the Metro, and it was great. It was really fun, and I'd never met him before and never played with him before, and after the show we're like, we should do something, and I was like, definitely, let's do this. And I've known Matt for a couple of years and seen him play so many times, and was always looking for something to do with him too. So I was kind of really into the idea of getting those two together.
Yeah, for sure. I know Jimmy's background, obviously, with the Smashing Pumpkins, and I know he's kind of a jazz-trained drummer. Matt, certainly on bass and with more of a background in composition, which I would think would lend itself well to this project. I imagine you'll be on guitar, but, what kind of is your role here in Mary Shelley?
I don't know. I mean, so far I've been sort of the noise bringer. I mean, I think I love movies more than most people. I just love music and image together, and it's just making it work like that in a live setting is really get a kick out of. It's really hard to describe.
Do you enjoy silent film?
Well, I do, but I've never seen Potemkin before. I mean, I've seen every movie that ripped it off, so this was almost a way to force myself to finally sit down and watch Battleship Potemkin, which was kind of funny. I mean, there's plenty of silent movies that I love. The one that I probably know the best is Nosferatu, but there was no way that we wanted to be another band that was going to do the soundtrack for Nosferatu.
You've got history placing songs on soundtracks because Local H has been on the Gravesend and Great White Hype and, Sling Blade, probably the most well-known. What is that process like? I mean, is that primarily a money and label-driven initiative, or can it still kind of be like an actual artistic pairing of music and film?
Most of those times, in the other movies that we've had stuff in, it's sort of like a placement thing. It's just like, hey, they want to use this song, cool. But like in the case of something like the Sling Blade soundtrack, I was sent a rough cut of that. I really loved it. I thought it was a great movie. And I wrote a bunch of stuff for it. And songs that were specifically written for it. And then it turned out that they didn't want that. the people at the label that were putting it together just wanted to use this Guided by Voices cover we did. I was like, oh, okay, all right. So put that on the soundtrack, and then nothing was in the movie. And then it turned out like all the stuff that I didn't know was that it was this huge fight between the label and Daniel Lanois. And then the next thing I know, like Daniel Lanois is on E! Television with Billy Bob, and they're kind of bad-mouthing us. And I was like, wait, hold on, what did I do, man? I mean, I just liked your movie, and I wrote some stuff, and you didn't use it. And I said, all right, fine. And next thing I know, we're this evil, like, corporate horror band. And, I was kind of like, all right. But, that was a situation. That was probably the closest I got to scoring something on a big level like that. And it wasn't cool. There was a lot of ego and a lot of assholes involved. So I just kind of was like, all right, this doesn't sound like any fun at all. I'll just take these songs and put them on our next record, See ya, Hollywood.
My guest tonight on the Rock and Roll Radio program, Mr. Scott Lucas of Local H. Local H in the studio now, prepping some of their first recordings with new drummer Ryan Harding. One of those is a fantastic cover of Lord's Team. That's available online now, so we'll post the link to that on our Facebook page, the Rock and Roll Radio program. Visit localah.com for recordings and tour dates. One of those tour dates brings Local H back home to Chicago and the Double Door on May 17th. But that's not what we're talking about tonight, because Scott has a show coming up with composer Matt Ulery and drummer Jimmy Chamberlin of the Smashing Pumpkins, coming together as a trio known as Mary Shelley, and they're going to provide the live score to silent film classic Battleship Potemkin. That's going on 5 days from tonight, Friday, May 2nd, in the Wicker Park neighborhood in Chicago at a place called First Ward, 2033 West North Avenue. So check that out. But Scott, the story you just told about your experience with the Sling Blade soundtrack kind of plays into something I wanted to ask about. I interviewed Marshall Crenshaw last year, and he's acted in La Bamba. He's had songs on soundtracks, plus he's written a book about the history of soundtracks and music and film. And something we kind of both worried about is the fact that it seems like so frequently now soundtrack work is reduced to a song playing over the closing credits of a movie while people aren't paying attention and they're leaving the theater. I mean, do you think soundtrack work can still have value? That it can still be an important part of the storytelling process in a film?
Well, yeah, I think, every year something comes out that sort of reinforces that to people. Like last year, people went crazy over that song that was in Llewyn Davis. And, for some inexplicable reason, it wasn't even nominated. I mean, one of my favorite scores is for Dead Man. And it's just Neil Young sitting down in front of the movie and just, playing his guitar and sort of noodling. And it's great. I would just find myself watching that movie mostly for the score. And I really love that. I think there's plenty of examples of music that is great, like what, Carter Burwell did for No Country for Old Men was pretty amazing.
I like Tarantino when it comes to a director who uses music really well in their film, but I think my favorite is Scorsese. Do you have a favorite?
Oh, Scorsese. And what Scorsese has been doing since Mean Streets is kind of he sort of changed and invented this rule book that everyone just kind of takes for granted now. He invented this type of movie, and he makes this movie, and you bitch at him for making the same movie over and over, but you cream all over somebody else's movie for ripping it off. I just don't understand, But yeah, I mean, how many people just completely rewrite a rule book when it comes to movies? Not many. And it's pretty cool. I think you're right. The way he uses music is terrific. It's just great. And I've always been a huge John Carpenter fan. And his scores they're perfect and they're great.
Scott Lucas of Local H joining us again tonight on the Rock and Roll Radio program. On tonight until 7 p.m. when Jill Morocco takes over with Miscellany, so stick around for that. Scott, a pretty big film buff, writes about it frequently for Chicagoist. Also wrote a piece on some of his favorite music films for Music Radar. We'll post all that on our Facebook page, so go check us out, the Rock and Roll Radio program. And visit localah.com for news on the band as well as tour dates. One of those tour dates for Scott solo, alongside Jimmy Chamberlin of the Smashing Pumpkins and local composer Matt Ulery. They're going to perform as a band called Mary Shelley. They will provide the live film score to the silent film Battleship Potemkin. That's going on 5 days from tonight, Friday, May 2nd at First Ward in Wicker Park, 2033 West North Avenue. Again, all these details at localah.com and our Facebook page. But, Scott, we talked about Scorsese, and obviously he uses the Rolling Stones quite a bit. every time I might start to think that maybe the Rolling Stones are a little bit overrated as a band, I watch something like Gimme Shelter, and it certainly reinstills my faith in them as a live act.
Yeah, Gimme Shelter is great, and Let's Spend the Night Together is pretty awesome too. And it's like a totally different phase of their career, but it's shot so well. And it's like some of the best cinematographers around were shooting that movie. And there's like this section where they're shooting it at magic hour, and the sun is just going down, and man, it looks incredible. And they got Hal Ashby to direct it. And it's pretty cool. But I really think maybe the best concert movie might be Stop Making Sense. It's absolutely incredible, and it's like you just watch, and what happens with the set design gradually as the movie goes on is super cool. The performances are incredible. It's a great movie, and there's no backstage stuff. They rarely cut away to the audience. It's a pretty perfect movie.
Yeah, it's kind of hard not to love the talking heads. Well, let me get you out of here on one last question. We talked a little bit about Gimme Shelter, and to me, that's kind of one of those concert films that actually crosses over a bit to where it's a documentary, too. A lot of those available right now on Netflix, and I know in your Music Radar piece, you kind of singled out a band called Death. One of my favorites is Lemmy, about Lemmy from Motorhead. But do you have any particular documentary favorites that you're fond of right now?
You know, I think there's a lot of rock documentaries now. They're everywhere, and they're all on Netflix. One that I saw last year I really liked was the punk singer, the one about Kathleen Hanna, and I thought that was great. It's pretty terrific. I mean, I think when you're going to come to the best rock documentaries, you have to go to the Maysles brothers. I think I would put Gimme Shelter in the rock documentary category more than the concert film category. And to go along with that would be Don't Look Back, the Bob Dylan movie by D.A. Pennebaker. I mean, that's incredible. That's a great one.
Well, there you go. Friday, May 2nd, 5 days from tonight at First Ward, 2033 West North Avenue in the Wicker Park neighborhood. Scott, alongside Jimmy Chamberlin of Smashing Pumpkins and Matt Ulery, local composer. For one night only, Mary Shelley performing the live score to the silent film Battleship Potemkin. Check out localah.com for other tour dates. One of those will be at the Double Door, also in Wicker Park, on May 17th. Also some suburban dates. We'll link to all of this stuff on our Facebook page, the Rock and Roll Radio program. This is part of the Chicago International Music and Movie Festival. So visit CIMMfest.org, CIMMfest.org for more details on that, because there's other performances too. Yola Tango is going to be part of this, as is Booker T. But we thank Scott Lucas for joining us again here tonight on the Rock and Roll Radio program.
No problem, man.
All right, well, a very special thank you to our guest tonight here on the Rock and Roll Radio program, Scott Lucas of Local H. Local H just released some of their first recordings with their new drummer Ryan Harding. A cover of Lord's Team garnered some national headlines this week. One of my favorite lyrics, I think, of the year. Kind of tired of being told to throw my hands up in the air from the mouths of babes.
And that cover rocks.
So go check it out. We'll post all this stuff on Facebook, but go check out that Local H cover of Lord's Team. But Local H doing this show, Scott is doing this show as Mary Shelley with Jimmy Chamberlin of Smashing Pumpkins. That is taking place on Friday, May 2nd at First Ward, which is in Wicker Park on the northwest side of Chicago, North Avenue, just west of Damon Avenue. Local H in all of its glory, all two members rocking out on May 17th at Double Door. That's a Saturday night. That's a benefit. It's also going to feature members of Truth and Salvage Company, as well as My Morning Jacket. We had Jason Arducci from Split Single on this show 2 weeks ago, if you heard that. His band Split Single also performing that night. So that's Local H in all its glory, a benefit for Matt Suhar, so go check that out as well. Again, link to all the stuff on our page. But let's close this show up, Sean. We're running out of time before Jim Larocco takes over here at 7, and we got one